fire, earth, air, and water. Places of raw power and impossible truths. Realities unsoftened by mortal compromise. They are the firstborn bones of creation, the four anchors of matter and energy, locked in a ceaseless waltz of harmony and violence. The inner planes are places of raw power and pure elements, of ultimate states and extreme conditions. They are the building blocks of the rest of the universe and represent matter and energy in their primal states. As destinations go, the inner planes are the most inhospitable to creatures from the material plane. Unprepared travelers are at best helpless before such power, and at worst, they're snuffed out like candles in a tornado. Chapter 1. A TOUT's reading. Folks like to think about centers. Cages in Sigil think that they're at the center of the multiverse. Lots of Burks on the Prime think that their world is the focus of everything, although a body could argue that such belief's not really their fault, since they don't know any better. Now, show a cutter a map of the Great Ring, and he'll probably think that the Outlands lie at the center. Then show him a representation of the whole cosmos, with all the planes, not just the ring, and he'll likely realize it's wrong. No, he'll admit, it appears that the inner planes are the center of the multiverse. The real dark, to those who know the ways of the planes, is that there isn't a center, not really. In a space without bounds, any spot can be the center. Still, somebody who picks the inner planes as the core of the multiverse really isn't all that far from the truth. They're not the center as far as location goes, but they're a good choice as a center for existence. Existence is what the inner planes are all about. While the substance of the outer planes is belief, the inner planes are immutable reality. The surreal, intangible thought realms of the metaphysical outer planes may change, giving rise to beings shaped from belief and faith, powers, fiends, celestials, and the like. But the real, tangible, material worlds of the utterly physical inner planes never change, no matter what a body thinks or holds dear. As inner planar natives say, believe what you want, fire still burns and wind still blows. When folks think of the inner planes, they often think of just the four core elemental planes. They picture the endless azure skies of the elemental plane of air and the hellish blaze of the plane of fire. They envision the eternal tides of water and the oppressive depths of elemental earth. Such thinking, however, results in a limited scope. There's a lot more to the inner planes than this. Even cutters experienced in planar travel, those who've explored one or more of the outer planes, or even hail from one of them, find the inner planes as absolutely different from what they've seen before as they can possibly imagine. They come away awed by the sheer fundamental, tangible reality, something they can't find even on the Prime, let alone the belief-based outer planes. Everything in the inner planes feels more real, appears more vivid, and affects them more deeply. Raw, powerful, deadly, and passionate, yet paradoxically detached, the inner planes seethe and roil, caring not how the rest of the multiverse fares. Sigil, the Prime, the Blood War, Modrons on the March. None of these mean anything to the inner planes or to those who live here. And that's ironic, considering that the inner planes are the soil and nutrients from which the rest of the multiverse grows. The inner planes comprise 6 major planes and a dozen lesser ones. The former include the 4 elemental planes and the 2 energy planes. The latter are divided into 4 parallelemental planes and 8 quasi-elemental planes. Most people think of the elemental planes as the fundamental building blocks of the cosmos. Just as a builder uses raw materials to construct a house, so too does the multiverse use the primal elemental matter of the inner planes to form not only the para and quasi-elemental planes, but every other plane as well. All of existence can trace its very being back to the 4 elements, and any bit from any other plane can be broken down into elemental properties, assuming a cutter's got the skill to do it. It's no mean feat, to say the least. Of course, a body shouldn't forget the importance of the two energy planes, or the role of belief in the composition of the outer planes, but that's getting too far ahead. More on that later. Air. The source of all things gaseous, this plane is a limitless expanse of crisp, sweet air. The sky above, below, and to the sides stretches into infinity, with a brilliant azure hue, dotted with occasional clouds and flying creatures. The conditions of the elemental plane of air make it one of the safest of the inner planes. A body can breathe here and needn't worry about things like being slowly ground to death by pressing stones or instantly consumed by relentless flames. Earth. The realm of solid matter. The elemental plane of Earth is an eternal mass of steadfast stone and uncontaminated soil laced with veins of metal ores and pockets of mineral deposits. Those who travel here must beware of the plane's oppressive weight, for it strives to crush everything that's not a part of it. Many folks call this place the Anvil, and the reasons for that nickname are manifold. The two greatest difficulties faced by a visitor to Earth are the simple acts of breathing and moving. After all, few creatures can suck in lungfuls of soil without finding their way to the dead book. And as for movement, well, it takes a tough basher to bore through even the softest regions of the plane. Fire. All that is heat, radiance, and raw motion comes originally from this plane. Fire is the plane of change, just as Earth is unmoving, immutable, and dependable. Some call fire the hottest place in the multiverse, and they may well be right. The blazing flames here consume everything they touch, which is why so many folks refer to the elemental plane of fire as the crematorium. A body can survive in this plane, but it's not easy. The air here isn't really air, but a thin mixture of flammable, toxic chemicals that are only slightly less deadly than the rest of the plane. And then, of course, there's the endlessly blazing ocean of fire, which, in due time, destroys everything it touches. Water. The source of all liquid substances and of fluidity itself, the elemental plane of water is commonly referred to as the bottomless deep. It's an endless mass of water, not too warm, not too cold, and utterly free of the crushing pressure that marks the depths of terrestrial oceans. The whole place is infused with a soft blue-green light that shimmers over everything. The greatest hazards that a body faces while exploring the bottomless deep are the currents and the lack of air. Usually, the latter problem can be overcome with some minor magic. The former problem, however, is more difficult to counter. A sod never knows when a deadly riptide will grab him and drag him along. All of the inner planes are infinite worlds unto themselves. Traveling within or between them can be a difficult and time-consuming endeavor. Guidelines for getting around a given plane appear in that plane's chapter, later in this tale. Still, certain considerations apply to the inner planes as a whole. The most important of these regards the hiring or use of elemental guides. An elemental guide is a native of a particular inner plane, usually an honest-to-goodness elemental, mephit, or other such creature. Some, however, are humans or other non-natives who've walked kip in the plane for most or even all of their lives. After all, few inner planes lack communities of displaced planers who've learned to live in the environment. A group of travelers can hire one of these guides to lead them to a given destination in the plane, though the advantages of securing such a guide can extend far beyond mere direction. Chapter 2. Elemental Plane of Air. The boundless blue. It is as open as the eternal sky. It is as solid as a child's breath. It is falling forever. Most readers were probably expecting a genie or someone like that to tell them about the elemental plane of air. I heard they got an honest-to-God's Afriti to give the chant on the plane of fire. A blood'll watch that basher for screed or appeal, if she's smart. Thing is, I'm about as close to a native of the plane of air as I could be without wings on my back. Now, a wind duke or an air elemental might be able to pass on some secret that I don't know, but it's doubtful. Not that I know all the chant there is to know, but if I don't know it, a native probably wouldn't put it in this book. The dark is, the air elementals and their like are pretty elitist. This plane's always full of bashers who come thinking air's the safe one of the inner planes. They're probably right, but that don't mean a body shouldn't listen to someone who knows what's what, like me. So listen up. Of all the inner planes, none is more frequently visited than the elemental plane of air. Greybeards give a dozen reasons for this, but it really boils down to two important facts. First, none of the inner planes are as easy to survive as the boundless blue. After all, a body certainly doesn't have to worry about breathing here, something that can be a real problem in most of the other inner planes. If she can avoid getting swept up in a gale, taking the eternal plunge, as described later in this chapter, or getting on the wrong side of a local basher, even the most clueless planewalker will have to go out of her way to get killed here. The second, and perhaps more obvious reason for air's popularity, is the scenery. Even the most poetic souls have difficulty finding the words to describe the endless blue skies that stretch off forever, and the seas of white clouds that drift lazily through them. Any sod who isn't moved to just lie back and watch the boundless blue for a few hours is lacking something inside. Chant is that a portal to air can be found atop the highest branch of Yggdrasil, the world ash. A steady wind ripples from the portal, keeping the green leaves of the greatest of all trees tossing happily to and fro. Supposedly, the portal allows two-way passage, placing it among the more friendly rips in the fabric of the multiverse. High above the endless landscape of Arborea stand the great pillars and towers of the Greek pantheon. It's said that among these structures, a body can find not one, but two portals to the elemental plane of air. Each is opened with a different key, and the portals are linked so that both must be opened at the same time. Of course, since they're located many miles apart, it takes great coordination and a bit of luck to open both doorways at once. Mount Celestia also hides several portals to the boundless blue. At the heart of Jovar, the glittering heaven, sits a massive stone ziggurat. While those who ascend this structure find themselves entering the 7th layer of the mount, there is another secret here. Buried deep in the ziggurat is a portal to air, its existence kept dark by the Jovian archons who dwell there. Well, somewhat dark anyway. Actually, the portal's a poorly kept secret. Still, its exact location isn't known, and what key might open the doorway, and just why the archons wish to keep it to themselves, is anyone's guess. There's another portal, sort of, in Mercuria, home of Bahamut, the Draco Paladin. In this layer, the greatest of all dragons dwells in an immense palace, the scope of which few primes can imagine. When he wishes, Bahamut can command one section of his fortress to fade away, carrying all within it to the elemental plane of air. Once adrift in the boundless blue, the floating citadel travels wherever its master wishes. Bahamut can order the structure to come and go at will, even if he's not aboard it. Of course, a body can't forget that one important way to reach the plane of air, as is the case with all elemental planes, is through a vortex from the prime. Vortices that lead to air aren't as uncommon as those leading to many of the other inner planes. They are, however, often more difficult to use, as they tend to drift about, blowing back and forth in the wind. So, even after a Sip manages to find one of these handy little doorways, it can take all his skills to catch up to it. Vortices to the elemental plane of air are most commonly found in one of two places. Those that appear high in the atmosphere are called floating vortices. As a rule, they can be reached only by creatures that have some magical ability to fly, a powerful fly spell, an enchanted carpet, or some other such device. Animals, monsters, and others who depend on wings, gas bags, or similarly mundane methods of flight, generally can't ascend to the height at which these vortices are found. In addition to being very high in the air, floating vortices appear only at the center of great expanses of clear blue sky. A basher won't see a cloud mass or mountain peak anywhere in the vicinity. And since they're almost invisible, these vortices don't stand out very well from the air around them, which is, of course, more or less invisible to the average sod. It's a good thing that they're permanent, despite the fact that they tend to wander just a bit in the breeze. I'd guess that 2 or 3 floating vortices exist on any prime material world, but who can safely say for sure? The other common type of vortex linking the prime with the plane of air is generally referred to as a whirling vortex. The reason for this is obvious. They're found at the heart of a tornado or whirlwind. Some folks will tell you that every twister has a vortex at its core, and they may be right. The problem with this theory, though, is that whirlwinds move so fast and are so difficult to explore that no one's ever been able to answer the question one way or the other. Even getting to a whirling vortex is a problem. After all, greybeards have estimated that the winds of a tornado can reach 300 miles per hour. Only a fool or a titan would get in their way. Some people believe that a lot of the junk that floats through the boundless blue got yanked in through whirling vortices. They contend that these great maws sweep across the countryside and suck everything they roll directly over into the plane of air. And whatever they don't roll directly over just gets ripped to pieces. Whirling vortices aren't like most vortices. While they're more or less fixed in the plane of air, they tend to wink in and out of existence on the prime material. For proof, just look at the tornadoes created by these channels. After all, they don't usually last for more than a few minutes, do they? Without a doubt, the most commonly encountered non-elemental race in the plane of air is the wondrous jinn. These magnificent magical creatures, regarded with awe and fear by prime and planar alike, have built numerous strongholds here. The greatest of all such dwellings is the citadel of ice and steel. The jinn war against the cloud and storm giants found in the boundless blue, and they don't get on with the elementals well either. Most folks point to jinni arrogance as the cause. Mostly, however, the jinn battle the Ifrit of the elemental plane of fire. Legions of Ifrit, often supplemented by conscripted salamanders, elementals, and other creatures, launch attacks upon the jinn caliphate through Jabal Turab, a smouldering volcano that serves as a vortex connecting the two planes. Great Caliph Hussam al-Balil, Ben Nafat al-Yugayim, master of the clouds and son of the breezes, rules over all jinn, but he rarely leaves the citadel of ice and steel. Chant has it that the jinn search throughout the inner planes for a magical seal said to have the power to command any of their kind, even their ruler. They fear it falling into the wrong hands. Chapter 3. Elemental Plane of Earth, the Anvil. It is a place of hidden riches. It is a wall against all foes. It is a grave for the greedy. My name is Tiv, and I am of the Shad. My folk are not native to the plane of Earth, like the living stone that outsiders call elementals, or the masters of rock you call Galebdur. But we have dwelled here long enough to have forgotten any other place. This endless stretch of stone is now home to the Shad, and that gladdens us and gives us identity. Some outsiders say that the plane of fire is the most inhospitable of the elemental planes. While it might be the most dangerous, it is not nearly as difficult a place as the plane of Earth. Many travelers call this plane the Anvil, and there are a good many reasons for that. First of all, outsiders cannot breathe here. There are occasional pockets of air, places where anyone with sense rests for a while and give thanks. But these often become the lairs of dangerous and hungry monsters. We Shad have little need for air, but even we cannot survive within the solid earth. Travelers should be prepared for such obstacles. Another challenge here is the matter of mobility. Getting from place to place in the plane of Earth can require endless effort, a very strong back, and a pick that would do great Dumathoin proud. We dig and burrow. That is our life. The Shad do not follow the set paths. Instead, we make our own. The plane of Earth is both our Lord and our adversary. It provides for us, yet presents itself as our greatest challenge. All told, if one does not fear being buried alive, a fear shared by many outsiders, I am told, one may like our realm and our way of living. While most of Earth consists of hard, unyielding rock, it is not without variation. Every manner of stone can be found here, from delectable gypsum to trustworthy granite, to lustrous marble, to soothing graphite. Beyond that, a fortunate explorer can find rich veins of metal, everything from silver and gold to iron and copper. It is small wonder that dwarves and similar folk talk about the plane of Earth as if it were one step removed from paradise. To others who have a fondness for things such as air and water, however, there are nicer places in the multiverse, and as I understand it, most places fit this description. Making one's way to or from the elemental plane of Earth is not an easy thing. Portals to this place are rare, and vortices that open into this realm are difficult both to discover and reach. Still, those determined enough can manage with effort. I, myself, have traveled to a few other planes, though that was when I served as a slave of the Tao many years ago. Only a few portals are known to link the elemental plane of Earth with the rest of the multiverse. Some are found in the strange and mysterious city called Sigil, but others appear throughout the outer planes. Perhaps the most interesting portal to the Anvil can be found on the clockwork plane of Mechanus. Those familiar with that realm of perfect order insist that the portal is merely a side effect. According to their tale, an ancient and long-forgotten race built a vast machine, one larger than many prime material worlds. To power this device, the elder beings opened a portal to the elemental plane of Earth and tapped into the agonizingly slow, continual drift of our realm. The machine still stands on Mechanus, its clockwork ticking ever so slowly in harmony with the plane of Earth. What this device is supposed to do is a secret that I believe no one has yet discovered. However, the portal is always open, since the machine acts as an eternal key. Those who step through it should be aware, however, that their trip will be a one-way journey. The dismal depths of Bator hold another well-documented portal to Earth. It lies in Phlegethos, the fourth layer, near the center of the city called Abrimok, and it provides convenient passage between Bator and the evil fortress of Stonemire. The portal allows the pit fiend that rules the accursed city easy access to great and fearful Ogamok, the prince of evil earth elementals. While it remains clear that these two conspire together for some diabolical purpose, the nature of their alliance is still a matter for nervous guesswork. In order to use this portal, which transports travelers both ways, one must have a large diamond. While this can be a frighteningly valuable key, especially considering the fact that it turns to powder in its use, there is an even harder trick to using the portal. Both of the gatekeepers consider themselves its sole master. As such, each has surrounded his end with guards, traps, and wards. The odds of a traveller nearing the portal, let alone making use of it, are fairly slim. Vortices that lead to the elemental plane of Earth are found only among large concentrations of natural stone. Typically, this means the heart of a mountain, but not a volcano, or far beneath the surface of a prime material world. From time to time, an unlucky group of primes stumbles upon such a gateway while mining or exploring, almost always getting themselves killed in the process. The most commonly encountered vortices to the plane of Earth are found deep underground in areas prone to earthquakes. Are the vortices byproducts of the tremors, or vice versa? Even the wisest men cannot answer that question. The dark of the matter, however, is that these gateways tend to move around a lot, always in conjunction with an earthquake. The stronger the quake, the farther the vortex shifts. Again, no one knows whether the vortex moves because of the tremor or whether the presence of the vortex causes the tremor to break out. It is said that the greatest of mountains have at their hearts a concentration of pure elemental earth. In some cases, this takes the form of a vortex to the anvil, which may be known to dwarves and other races that dwell beneath the surface of prime material worlds. Unlike most other vortices, these are anchored in place. Once discovered, they can be used for years, decades, or even centuries to come. In some cases, they become the center of subterranean communities that recognize their importance and potential value. Tau are evil creatures and mean-tempered in the extreme. They delight in the accumulation of wealth and care nothing for the harm and suffering this causes others. Proof of this can be seen in the opulence of their dwellings. Shad hate Tau, for they capture and enslave us as they put us to work, in their mines, cities, and homes. They even use us to help capture other slaves. Most Shad slaves die in captivity, for we cannot take such a life for long. The Tau do not care. A great many Tau citadels lie within the plane of Earth, each located at the heart of a vast mazework. The typical Tau mazework is home to several Tau and many slaves, most of whom are elementals or elemental kin of some sort, but often include humans, dwarves, drow, gargoyles, goblins, gorgons, Jan, minotaurs, umber hulks, and many, many more. At the head of these folk is a Tau ataman, or hetman, who is aided by a seneschal of great wisdom. Tau warriors often ride greater basilisks into battle and utilize Zorn, stone giant, and sandmen mercenaries. Each mazework is associated with one or more elemental pockets, and the nature of that resource greatly affects the flavor of the place's architecture and life. A classic example of this is the Fiery Cascade. This stronghold is located between two pockets of elemental fire, which have been tapped to create a vast, three-dimensional network of flaming moats. The technique proves most effective at keeping unwanted visitors out. The Tau live in a realm known as the Great Dismal Delve. Chapter 4. Elemental Plane of Fire, the Crematorium. It is a plane continually ablaze. It smells of burning flesh and ashen dreams. It is flame incarnate. Greetings, honored readers. I am Riddell Im Bashadil, commander of the Melted Wing, a dedicated legion of the finest soldiers ever given life in the flames of a mother's womb. I have been chosen above all others to instruct those unfortunates not native to the elemental plane of fire. I deem of my heart and home. This I do gladly. My great Sultan, Lord of Flame, the potentate incandescent, the tempering and eternal flame of truth, the most puissant of hunters, Marshal of the Order of the Fiery Heart, the smouldering dictator, and the crimson firebrand, wishes me to encourage those who come to our realm to do so with greater education. The more a cutter knows, the more likely it is that he may avoid roasting in the pit of slow-burning flame for angering my people, the great and noble Efreet. Philiag Highthumbs of the cold and dark city of Sigil once wrote this of his plane of elemental fire in his Planes and Travel journals, which were published posthumously many years ago. If there's a more hostile place than the elemental plane of fire anywhere in the multiverse, it's being kept in the dark. From start to finish, this plane is nothing short of destruction incarnate. Nothing, either animate or inanimate, that finds its way here lasts for long, especially without a good deal of magical protection. That's why folks call it the crematorium. When most primes, especially the clueless ones, think of hell, they think of a place that looks a lot like the plane of fire. The lowest regions of the place appear as a giant sea of living fire. Occasionally, plumes of flame leap into the air, becoming vast, blazing clouds of oily incineration. In time, these roiling firestorms slowly settle down to the surface again, frying everything they touch. If a body hasn't tumbled to the idea yet, it's really, really hot here. The honoured Master High Thumbs obviously has, or I should say, had, a poor opinion of my home. Actually, that does not surprise me. To those from the frigid realms beyond the plane of fire, the glory that is true flame must be more than they can comprehend. My sympathies. His description of the plane is not entirely inaccurate, however. The sea of scorching waves washes upon the shores of the lands of fire, while the scalding skies rise above, filled with firestorms and rippling waves of pure, invisible heat. Thus, unlike the natives of some of the inferior elemental planes, we can identify such simple concepts as up and down here. But I will not linger overlong on the misfortunes of the lesser born. Most physical objects from elsewhere simply burst into flames the moment they arrive in the elemental plane of fire. Some do not even last that long, being instantly and utterly consumed too fast for their owner to notice. In most cases, things burn so thoroughly that no ash or other residue is left behind. The weakness of flammability becomes apparent here more than in the cold realms outside the plane. Even objects that do not burn on the frozen wastes of the prime material or most of the outer planes catch fire or melt here. While a pleasant thing for my kind and the elementals and their kin, this can cause hardship for an outsider. However, magical items forged elsewhere have a chance of surviving the hungry flames. Perhaps you should come to our plane bearing a great number of magical items. Ahem. In any event, volcanic stone is not subject to the heat of the inferno. Thus, a traveller can sometimes find islands of obsidian or basalt, and even scattered, extensive deserts of pumice floating in the endless sea of fire. Such places may offer respite from the searing flames, but they do nothing to lessen the heat. Those from the worlds of diluted elements must learn a number of things if they are to survive in the elemental planes. In the lifeless, boring expanse of the plane of stone, for instance, explorers who do not possess a plan for moving through solid stone will be lost the minute they arrive. Of course, the biggest obstacle to travelling the realm of fire should seem obvious to even the most inexperienced traveller. They must discover a way to resist the heat and flames that their too frail cold bodies cannot tolerate. Many assume, for reasons which I do not fully understand, that the plane of elemental fire is an evil place. Perhaps the answer lies in the concept many races have regarding hell, or perhaps it is because fire can be a destructive, ever-hungering force. Some even call my plane the crematorium, which seems quite rude to me, truth be told. Do not assume that just because our environment is so hostile to your cool flesh, that we, the inhabitants of this realm, are all evil. It must be said, for all our good narrator's protestations, that many of the inhabitants of the plane of fire are evil in nature. Of course, many inner planar natives tend toward evil, just as a fair portion are dedicated to the cause of good. And it should be said that unlike the fiends of the lower planes, Ifrit, salamanders, and other inner planar bashers aren't inherently, irrevocably evil, good, or at least neutral in mind. Ifriti, for example, are more common than a body might think. The plane of fire is not only dangerous to non-natives, but, I am told, it can be very difficult to reach. Few gateways lead here, and even fewer lead out. Still, those who possess the determination can find their way into this vast, insatiable blaze. I have no wish to mention the well-documented portals of Sigil to others. Instead, I will reveal a few of the lesser-known means of ingress that I have learned of from planar travelers. In the tortured wastes of Carcere's lowest sphere, there is an immense portal bound within a great ring of jumbled bones. Every one of these bones comes from an intelligent creature of some sort. In order to open this magical conduit and thus travel to fire, a creature must press a bone against the ring. This bone must be from some manner of intelligent creature. Further, it must be from a type of creature whose bones have never before been used to open the portal. If the bone is new to the gate, it is absorbed into the structure of the portal and the doorway opens. If this type of bone has already been used to open the gate, nothing happens. So just how likely is it that any given type of bone works? Well, don't expect anything common to open the portal. The noble Ifrit, eternal enemies of the hated Jinn, call the elemental plane of fire our home. We are such an integral part of this plane that our bodies are composed of basalt, bronze, and flame itself. Although we Ifrit are not so simple as to wholly be labelled evil, as if we were all forged of the same flame, there are a few among us who one might call self-serving and arrogant, I will admit. The centre of our insurmountable power is the awesome city of Brass. In addition to this magnificent fortress, we have spread our keeps and outposts throughout the plane of fire to keep it secure. I say to you, our dominance is only for the good of the plane. The typical Ifrit outpost houses over 20 Ifrit, and there is a fair chance that Duch may also be found there. The Grand Sultan of the Ifrit and an inner council of 6 high pashas rule the city of Brass, while a variety of Dais, Amirs, and Maliks oversee the outposts. We also have built grand fortresses to secure our power throughout the outlying provinces stretching away from the city of Brass. We build these great structures from obsidian or submerge them within liquid metal or flaming oil pits. Each serves as a bastion for 1,000 or more of our greatest soldiers. I, myself, command a fortress called the Black Nest, which floats upon the sea of scorching waves. It lies near the Isles of Scorched Bones, where rumour has it the bones of some long-dead race rest above the flaming sea. These islands now provide a home to hundreds of thousands of firebats and a great many fire mephits, which I and those in my command take great sport in hunting. We Ifrit often utilise slave labour traded to us from the Tao of Earth in exchange for magic or iron-wrought work. We despise the Jinn of Air and the Marids of Water, cursed fire-extinguishing water, for their opposition to our most glorious of elements. Most of the intelligent races of fire resent our power and lust after our position as masters of this plane. Still, the salamanders, the Aza, the fire newts, and even the elementals themselves eventually find their way to Ifriti citadels or the city of Brass. In short, they need us more than they hate us. Chapter 5. Elemental Plane of Water, the Bottomless Deep. It is an ocean without a surface. It is domain of current and wave. It is a bottomless depth. I found it necessary to compile the information in this section myself. Although I explored many different avenues in attempting to find an appropriate researcher or narrator for this chapter, none could be found. A Triton, who shall remain nameless, promised to deliver a manuscript, but I never heard from him again. The Nereid and the Water Genasi. Replacements, likewise, never came through. It almost makes one a little leery that somebody out there doesn't want the dark of this plane revealed. Is there a secret out there in those murky depths? Almost certainly. In fact, they're probably far more than just one. Clueless folks think of the elemental plane of water as a body of water that's more or less like a giant ocean. In some ways, that's true enough. In other regards, though, there are some very important differences. Perhaps the most telling difference between the bottomless deep and a prime ocean is the fact that there's no surface. Now, to some, that may seem like an addle-COVID thing to say, but a body might be surprised at how many leatherheads out there think that ships sail on top of the plane of water. Let's clear that misconception up right now. A basher can swim forever, and he'll never find the surface or the ocean floor. This endless sea has neither. Not that a body could figure out which way to swim to even try it. As in the elemental plane of air, there's no up or down here, no gravity at all, in fact. Unlike that realm, though, a body here can't convince himself that a given direction is down. Well, Actually, he can. It just doesn't have any effect. This lack of gravity means that the hazards of water pressure aren't present. No matter how deep you swim, and deep is a truly relative term here, the crushing weight of a terrestrial ocean never materializes. There's also a soft light, a rippling blue-green glow, infusing the whole plane. Exactly what causes this is unknown, but it's fairly constant throughout the place. Thus, no matter how far a body goes, he'll never want for light. Most people assume that a really large body of water, like an ocean, will be laced with salt. That's not the case here, save for elemental pockets of salt. Curiously, however, this doesn't matter to the creatures of water. All manner of aquatic life, denizens of both fresh and salt water, survive comfortably here. Indeed, the nurturing quality of this realm allows creatures native to Arctic oceans to mingle with those from the tropics. Of all the elemental planes, only the plane of air is less hostile, at least environmentally. Anybody with an airy water or similar spell at her disposal can cope just fine here. For the most part, the water of the bottomless deep is sweet-tasting, crystal clear, and neither too warm nor too cold. For aquatic races like the Lokatha, Tritons, Sawagin, Kuotoa, and many others, this is nothing short of heaven, literally in the case of those races' watery petitioners. Given that the elemental plane of water has one of the least hostile environments among the inner planes, at least to primes and other mortal folk, it should come as no surprise that it's one of the most frequently visited. It's also fairly easy to reach, as there are probably more portals connected to the plane of water than to any other inner plane, except air. A canny blood will remember one important fact about portals and such leading to the plane of water. If the gate isn't already underwater, a body opening it up must know if it's going to let in water or not. More than a few otherwise intelligent people have drowned after opening a portal to elemental water within a building that quickly flooded. In Muspelheim, the realm of the Asgardian giants, lies a vast, shimmering pool known as the Silver Eye. While it is said that anybody who looks into the eye catches a glimpse of what the future holds for him, those who know the dark recognize that the eye conceals another secret. Anyone who wades out to the middle of the pool, it's only about 3 feet deep, carrying a staff made of yew wood, can open a gate to and from the plane of water. Naturally, the giants who call Kip here aren't keen on sharing the secret with outsiders. Now, the eye is quite large, about 100 yards in diameter. Once it's open, the gate remains passable for a full hour. Because of this, a sizable force can be moved through the eye into the plane of water. This fact isn't lost on those who dwell on either side of the gate. It's said that the river Oceanus, which joins the 4 layers of Elysium, flows with the purest water outside of the elemental planes. Only the Cardinals of Elysium know the exact location of the Oceanus Gate. They make sure that no creature of evil alignment ever finds it. Why they bother with this is something of a mystery, however, for only someone whose heart is pure can open the portal. In addition, a powerful individual named Alec watches over this gate. The son of a Nereid and a mariner from the prime material plane, Alec is said to be able to unleash strokes of lightning from his eyes and exhale gusts of tornado wind. Whether or not this is true, he certainly has done a fine job of controlling access to the Oceanus Gate. It may be easy to guess at the location of vortices to the plane of water, but they're generally hard to reach. Many prime worlds are covered with large, ever-churning oceans. Deep beneath their surfaces, when the tide is right and the energies of the multiverse come into alignment, magical channels open. For those clever enough to find these, or unlucky enough to be swept up by them, such vortices provide quick transit to the elemental plane of water. Of course, Most surface-dwelling creatures can't hope to survive the pressures found so deep in the ocean. However, two prominent, more accessible types of vortex link the prime material plane with the bottomless deep: storm surges and whirlpools. The elemental plane of water is home to the Marids, a powerful race of genies. They're a reclusive folk who live in scattered burgs throughout the plane. Their greatest city is the Citadel of 10,000 Pearls, in which the ruling Padisha resides. Most other strongholds house a dozen Marid or more, and are built in close proximity to one or more coral masses, or, more rarely, an elemental pocket. They don't like to live out in the open. Marids are known for their pride and egos. All claim to be of noble lineage, with the most lowly of them employing titles like Shah, Atbeg, or Mufti. They look down on all other races, but tolerate the presence of Jan and Jinn. They bear a great hatred for the Tao, Efreet, and all other such opposed elemental races. Lesser creatures, including humans, elves, and just about everything else in the multiverse, are considered rabble. As such, the Marids generally ignore them, unless they become a nuisance. Out of necessity, the Marids established loose alliances with the Nereids, Water Mephits, and Undine. At the same time, they display open hostility toward the Hydrax, Spitters, and Varig. And when they encounter the fiendish Hydroloths and Westroliths, the Marid set aside all other matters to destroy them. How do Marids react to planewalkers? Well, that usually depends on how well the Bloods can entertain the genies. If they can keep these masters storytellers amused for a time, the outsiders will probably be allowed to go on their way. A truly gifted group might even persuade the Marids to aid them in some way. Those who fail to amuse their captors need not worry about future audiences. Canny Bloods remember that Marids have the power to bestow the ability to breathe water for days at a time. They also keep in mind that these genies have the ability to take such temporary water-breathing capabilities away, regardless of their source. Now, folks who may be searching for a way to the elemental planes and the inner planes think themselves immune. The common saying, "that won't happen to me," moves over every Burke and traveller. But we touts, those who do this daily, know the truth. Understand that these are places that you can reach. Why you would want to, be it adventure, treasure, discovery, are all viable reasons. Nonetheless, if we could give you one piece of advice, be prepared, for any plane or travel plan does not survive the first meeting with these unpredictable locations. Fire, earth, air, and water. Places of raw power and impossible truths. Realities unsoftened by mortal compromise. They are the firstborn bones of creation, the four anchors of matter and energy, locked in a ceaseless waltz of harmony and violence.